You have been standing at the edge for a long time now. Not the edge of anything dangerous, just the edge of beginning. That invisible wall between thinking about doing something and actually doing it. You can feel it right now, can't you? That quiet resistance, that strange heaviness that shows up every single time you get close to starting. It is not laziness. It is not a lack of ideas. You have plenty of ideas. Too many, probably. And that might be exactly the problem. If you can give me just 20 minutes, not tomorrow, not later, just the next 20 minutes of your attention right now, I want to show you something that might change the way you see that wall forever. Because the fear of starting is not what you think it is. It is not weakness. It is not a character flaw. It is a very specific psychological pattern, and once you see it clearly, it starts to lose its power. And the reason 20 minutes is enough is because this fear was never as deep as it pretended to be. It was just loud. And loud things tend to shrink when you finally turn around and look at them. Let us begin with something most people never hear about. There is a trait that psychologists have studied for decades, but it rarely shows up in casual conversation. It is called high trait introspection. And if you are the kind of person who thinks deeply about everything, who replays conversations in your head, who notices details other people miss, who feels the weight of decisions long before you make them, then there is a very good chance this trait lives in you. High trait introspection is not a disorder. It is not something broken. It is simply a description of a mind that turns inward more often and more intensely than most. People with this trait tend to be thoughtful, creative, empathetic, and deeply aware of the world around them. They notice the subtext beneath conversations. They feel the mood of a room before anyone speaks. They carry other people's emotions without being asked to. They lie awake at night thinking about things they said 3 years ago. They rewrite conversations in their head, imagining what they should have said instead. They feel deeply about things that other people brush off without a second thought. And in many ways, this is a gift, a rare and beautiful gift. It allows them to see things that others walk right past. It gives them a richness of inner life that most people never experience. But here is where the gift becomes a trap. When a person with high trait introspection decides they want to start something, their mind does not just think about the first step. It thinks about every step. It thinks about what could go wrong at step 3. It imagines the criticism at step 7. It fast forwards to the worst possible outcome at step 20, and then circles back to the beginning and asks, is it even worth it? All of this happens in seconds. And from the outside, it looks like hesitation. But from the inside, it feels like drowning in possibility. Not the good kind of possibility. The suffocating kind. The kind that makes you feel like you have already failed before you have done a single thing. This is what I call the microscope effect. And it is one of the most common reasons intelligent, creative, sensitive people never start the things they care about most. The microscope effect is what happens when your mind zooms in too far, too fast, on something that has not even happened yet. Instead of seeing the big picture, you see every tiny flaw, every potential crack, every hypothetical disaster, all magnified to an overwhelming degree. A simple decision, like starting a journal, or sending an email, or recording a video, or writing the first page of something you have been dreaming about, gets turned into a philosophical puzzle. Your mind starts asking questions that have no answers. What if it is not good enough? What if people judge me? What if I put myself out there and nothing happens? What if I succeed and then cannot keep up? What if starting this means giving up something else? What if the timing is wrong? What if I am wrong? Each question feels urgent. Each one demands a response. And because your mind is wired to take these questions seriously, it tries to solve all of them before you even begin, which of course is impossible. You cannot solve problems that do not exist yet, but your brain does not know that. It treats hypothetical threats the same way it treats real ones. It floods your body with the same tension, the same tightness in your chest, the same restless energy that comes from facing actual danger. And so, you freeze. Not because you are afraid of failure, but because you are afraid of the complexity that lives between where you are and where you want to be. The sheer volume of things your mind can see all at once becomes the very thing that holds you in place. Now here is where things get even more interesting and a little more painful. There is a network inside your brain that plays a central role in all of this. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network. It is the system that activates when you are not focused on the outside world, when you are daydreaming, when you are lying in bed at night staring at the ceiling, when you are sitting in a quiet room with nothing to do. That is when this network lights up. And what it does, more than anything, is it runs simulations. It replays the past. It rehearses the future. It constructs scenarios, conversations, outcomes, and identities. It is the part of your brain that asks, who am I? And what would happen if? And for people with high trait introspection, this network is exceptionally active. It does not just run in the background. It runs constantly, loudly, relentlessly, and it has a very particular habit that makes the fear of starting almost unbearable. It loops. Consider a composite example based on observed patterns. Imagine a person who has wanted to start a creative project for years. They have notebooks full of ideas. They have spent hours researching, planning, and imagining what it could become. But every time they sit down to actually begin, something happens. Their mind starts spinning. It jumps from excitement to doubt in seconds. It tells them the idea is not original enough. It reminds them of someone else who already did something similar. It whispers that starting now means they should have started sooner, and starting sooner means they are already behind. And before they know it, an hour has passed, and they have not written a single word. They have not recorded a single second. They have not taken a single step. They have only thought, deeply, thoroughly, exhaustively, and yet they feel more stuck than they did before they sat down. This is the loop. Think, doubt, analyze, hesitate, think again, doubt again, rearrange the plan, question the plan, abandon the plan, start a new plan, doubt the new plan, and on and on and on. The cruelest part of it is that the person caught inside this loop is not avoiding work because they do not care. They are avoiding it because they care too much. Their standards are so high and their awareness is so sharp that the gap between what they imagine and what they think they can produce feels impossibly wide. And so, they stay in the only place that feels safe, inside their own head, where the project is still perfect, where the idea still has potential, where nothing has been ruined yet by the messy, unpredictable, imperfect reality of actually doing it. And the longer they stay in that safe place, the harder it becomes to leave, because the loop feeds on time. The more time you spend thinking, the more invested you become in the thinking itself. And the more invested you become, the higher the stakes feel. What started as a simple idea now carries the weight of months of deliberation. It is no longer just a project. It is a test of your worth. And who wants to fail a test they have been studying for that long? But here is what the loop never tells you. Staying in your head is not safety. It is stagnation. And stagnation has a cost that is far greater than any mistake you could ever make. Let us talk about that cost. Because this is the part that most people avoid thinking about, even the deep thinkers, especially the deep thinkers. The cost of not starting is not just a missed opportunity. It is not just a project that never got made or a dream that never got chased. It is something much more personal than that. It is a slow, quiet erosion of something much more important. It is the erosion of your trust in yourself. Every time you plan to start and do not follow through, a small crack forms in the foundation of your self-belief. And over time, those cracks add up. They spread, they connect. And one day you wake up and realize that the foundation is not solid anymore. You start to see yourself as someone who thinks but never does, someone who dreams but never builds, someone who has ideas but never acts on them. And that identity, once it takes hold, becomes a prison. Because now it is not just a project you are afraid of, it is yourself. You are afraid of confirming what you secretly suspect, that maybe you are not the kind of person who finishes things. Maybe you are not the kind of person who follows through. And that fear, that quiet, personal, deeply private fear, is far more paralyzing than any external judgment could ever be. And here is what makes it worse. The world does not wait. It does not pause while you figure things out. It does not hold your place in line while you run another simulation in your head. Other people are starting. Other people who are less prepared than you, less thoughtful than you, less talented than you, are out there making mistakes and learning from them and getting better while you sit in the loop, refining an idea that never sees the light of day. And this is not meant to shame you. That is not the point. This is meant to wake you up, gently, with care, because the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not going to close itself. And every day you spend thinking instead of doing, that gap gets a little wider. Not because you are falling behind, but because the world is moving forward, and you are standing still, perfectly aware of everything, deeply understanding of every obstacle, and completely, utterly frozen. That is the peak of it. That is the moment where the fear feels the most real, where the weight feels the heaviest, where the silence in your life becomes louder than any noise outside of it, where the voice in your head says, with absolute certainty, you cannot do this, you are not ready, you will never be ready. But here is what I need you to hear, really hear, not just read but feel. That voice is not telling you the truth, it is telling you a story, a very convincing story, a story built from years of overthinking and months of hesitation and thousands of loops that went nowhere. But it is still just a story, and stories can be rewritten, even the ones that feel permanent, even the ones that have been playing on repeat for years. Let us talk about how. The first thing you need to understand is that your fear of starting is not a fear of action. It is a fear of imperfection. You are not afraid of doing the thing. You are afraid of doing the thing badly. And because your mind is so good at imagining outcomes, it has already shown you 100 ways it could go wrong. But what it has not shown you, because it cannot, is what happens when you push through anyway. It cannot simulate courage. It cannot model resilience. It cannot predict the strange, unexpected confidence that comes from doing something imperfectly and surviving it. Those things only exist on the other side of action, and your mind, for all its brilliance, cannot take you there. Only your hands can. Only your voice can. Only your body, moving forward, one clumsy step at a time, can carry you past the wall. There is a concept in psychology called metacognition. It simply means thinking about your own thinking. And for people who live in their heads, this is both a superpower and a curse. You are so aware of your own thought patterns that you can see the trap while you are inside it. You know you are overthinking. You know the loop is not productive. You know you should just start. But knowing is not enough, because knowing happens inside the same system that created the problem. You cannot think your way out of a thinking problem. You have to act your way out. And here is the reframe that changes everything. Thinking is not the enemy. For minds like yours, thinking is breathing. It is natural. It is constant. It is part of who you are. And there is nothing wrong with that. The world needs people who think deeply. It needs people who notice what others miss. It needs people who ask the hard questions and sit with the uncomfortable answers. But breathing alone does not build a life. At some point, you have to move. You have to speak. You have to create. You have to put something into the world that did not exist before you made it. Not because thinking is worthless, but because thinking without action is incomplete. It is like inhaling forever and never exhaling. The pressure builds, the tension rises, and eventually it becomes pain. That restless, anxious, guilty feeling you carry around, the one that whispers you should be doing more, that is not anxiety. That is not a flaw. That is unexpressed potential. It is your mind begging you to let something out. It is your creativity asking to breathe. So here is what I want you to try in the next 20 minutes. Pick the thing you have been avoiding, the project, the conversation, the first step, and do the worst possible version of it. Not the good version, not the polished version, the terrible version. Write the worst first sentence. Record the worst first take. Send the most imperfect first message. And then sit with it. Notice that you are still here. Notice that the world did not end. Notice that the voice in your head, the one that told you this would be a disaster, was wrong. It was not a disaster. It was a beginning. An ugly, honest, imperfect beginning. And that is all it ever needed to be. Because here is the secret that perfectionists and deep thinkers almost never discover on their own. The first version is not supposed to be good. It is supposed to exist. That is its only job, to exist. To take up space in the real world instead of living forever in your imagination. To be proof that you are more than your thoughts. To be evidence that you can move even when you are scared. And once it exists, something remarkable happens. The fear does not disappear, but it softens. The loop does not stop, but it slows. And the wall, that invisible wall you have been staring at for months or years, it does not crumble dramatically. It just becomes a little shorter. Short enough to step over. And once you step over it once, you realize something you could never have learned from thinking alone. The other side is not scary. It is just new. And new is something your beautiful, restless, overthinking mind has always been good at navigating. You just forgot. Because you have been so busy preparing for the journey that you never actually left. The world does not need your perfect version. It never did. It needs your real version. The version with rough edges and uncertain pauses and sentences that do not quite land the way you wanted them to. The version that stumbles. The version that second guesses itself halfway through and keeps going anyway. That version is alive. That version has warmth. That version has something that no amount of planning can produce, which is honesty. And honesty, more than polish, more than precision, more than any carefully constructed image, is what connects one human being to another. People do not fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with truth. And the truth of someone trying, really trying, despite everything their mind throws at them, is one of the most beautiful things a person can witness. So stop waiting for the moment when everything feels right. That moment is a mirage. It does not exist for people like you because your mind will always find one more thing to consider, one more angle to examine, one more reason to pause. The only way forward is to move while it still feels uncertain, to begin while the questions are unanswered, to trust that the answers will come, not from more thinking, but from the experience of doing. 20 minutes, that is all I ask for. And if you are still here, you have already proven something important. You have the ability to stay with something, even when it is uncomfortable, even when your mind tried to pull you away, even when part of you wanted to close this and go back to the familiar safety of planning and imagining and running one more loop. You stayed. You chose to be here. And staying is the first form of starting. It is the first crack in the wall. It is the first exhale after years of holding your breath. If this felt like someone finally put words to the thing you have been carrying, the thing you could never quite explain to the people around you, then I want you to know that there is more to explore. There are deeper layers to this. There are quieter truths about how minds like yours work and how they can thrive instead of just survive. If you would like to keep going on this path, consider subscribing so you do not miss what comes next. Not because you need to be fixed. You were never broken, but because you deserve to fully understand the mind you were given, and maybe, just maybe, to finally let it rest long enough to begin.